something I've been carrying around for too long, and it's time to spill it. It's a saga that's not only shaken me to my core, but has also torn the fabric of what I considered a peaceful community. This is the tale of Mr. Thompson, a seemingly mundane middle school teacher whose double life cast a long shadow over our quaint townhome complex. We all lived in this row of townhomes, kind of an ideal setup for families and singles alike. Affordable, friendly, with a bit of green space. It felt like we'd struck suburban gold. Tucked beneath these homes were crawl spaces, each boarded up to our own sections, at least so we thought. Mr. Thompson, with his tweed jackets and trivia about everything from the stars in the sky to the dirt beneath our feet, was the last person you'd peg for harboring dark secrets. He was the neighbor everyone trusted, the teacher your kids probably liked. He had this way of making you feel like you were sharing in some grand, educational adventure just by talking to him. He was also the Homeowners Association president and someone you wanted on your good side. But beneath the surface, something sinister was brewing. It started with minor oddities, misplaced items, a feeling of disarray when you'd come home, or the faint, unplaceable scent that wasn't yours. Alone, these things were easy to brush off. Forgetfulness, perhaps, or the house settling. Together, though, they painted a picture of violation. Time and time again, things felt off. One day, I had come home to find a wet towel in my clothes hamper and my shower with water still on the floor. There was a long black hair that I know was not mine laying next to the drain. This freaked me out as I live alone. I decided to get a camera that evening and hide it. The renovations at Mr. Thompson's place were the first tangible thread of suspicion. Ostensibly, he was updating his kitchen, a plausible excuse to explain the constant noise and the shipments of bulky, nondescript packages. But what he was really constructing was a doorway of secret passages leading from his crawl space into the crawl spaces that connected all 5 of our townhomes. As the truth emerged, it became clear that Mr. Thompson had been using these passages not just to enter our homes, but to establish a constant, unseen presence within them. Hidden cameras were found nestled among our most intimate spaces, their lenses capturing every moment of our private lives. But the cameras were just the beginning. He didn't stop at watching. When we were out, he'd slip into our homes. He'd lay in our beds, absorbing the remnants of our warmth, leave traces of himself behind in ways so subtle that we'd question our sanity. Sometimes, it was a shadow of scent on a pillow, or objects moved just slightly, enough to unsettle but not alarm, playing a psychological game designed to erode our sense of security. The discovery came when the Johnsons, a family 2 doors down, decided to replace their aging carpet. They had discarded the old carpet in the crawl space and found a direct line into the underbelly of our homes and, ultimately, to Mr. Thompson's basement. The police investigation that followed unveiled a horror that none of us were prepared for. His basement was a command center of voyeurism. Monitors lined the walls, each one broadcasting live feeds from our homes. There were shelves filled with our belongings, items we'd thought lost or misplaced, now revealed as trophies of his invasions. The betrayal was visceral, a wound that went beyond the physical, into the deeply personal. But the darkest revelation was yet to come. Beyond the theft and the spying, there were journals. Mr. Thompson had kept detailed logs of his observations, his thoughts on our lives, his fantasies of what he would like to do to us. Stuff that I can't share without crying. It was a window into a mind obsessed, not just with watching, but with controlling, with possessing the lives of those around him. Before he could be apprehended, Mr. Thompson vanished, leaving behind a trail of paranoia and fear. Rumors abound of his whereabouts. Some say he fled the country. Others whisper of a shadowy figure seen in the edges of town at dusk. Our homes now feel like shells, hollowed out by the knowledge of what happened within their walls. The aftermath has been a collective shudder through our community. Locks changed, security systems and cameras installed. Yet the feeling of safety remains elusive. The fear isn't just that he might return, but that there are others like him, lurking in the guise of normalcy, hiding in plain sight. I deleted all of my social media and moved as soon as possible. This story is a caution theory hubs, a reminder that monsters are real, and they often wear the most unassuming faces. Be vigilant, protect your sanctuaries, and never ignore the signs, because sometimes the smallest oddity can be the thread that unravels a nightmare.
Moving into this neighborhood felt like we'd hit the jackpot. Picture-perfect houses, friendly waves from everyone, and a real sense of community. Then, along came Mr. Holden, fitting in like he'd always been there. Elementary school teacher by day, Boy Scout leader by weekends. The guy was practically a walking, talking neighborhood welcome sign. Yet, despite his outward charm, something about him just didn't sit right with me. Call it gut instinct, but I always felt a chill whenever he smiled a little too widely. The first sign that something was deeply wrong started with the pets disappearing. It was subtle at first. An outdoor cat, here. A dog that didn't come home there. We chalked it up to wildlife or bad luck. But then, people began to vanish. Yeah, people. The kind of nightmare you think only happens in other places, not right next door. The mailman, who had a joke for every mailbox, simply didn't show up one day. And the woman who jogged past our house every morning at 6 a.m. sharp, one day, she just didn't. The absence of these familiar faces turned our once peaceful neighborhood into a place where suspicion and fear hung heavy in the air. We started locking our doors earlier and eyeing strangers with a wariness that was new to us. The community BBQs and block parties that were the heart of our neighborhood, gone, just like that, as trust evaporated under the weight of our growing fears. A few of us, maybe braver or more foolish than the rest, decided something had to be done about Mr. Holden. His odd habits had become impossible to ignore. Why was he always in his garage at odd hours of the night? What was with the large, heavy-looking bags he was constantly loading into his car under the cover of darkness? Our curiosity turned into a covert surveillance mission. We were determined to find out what was happening behind the closed doors of Mr. Holden's home. Then, one evening, I saw something that I still can't shake. Peering through a crack in his basement window, I caught sight of a figure, bound and gagged, a look of utter terror in their eyes. My blood ran cold. In that moment, every horror story I'd ever heard felt real. I was about to turn away when headlights flooded the driveway. Mr. Holden was home. Panic set in. I blurted out the first thing that came to mind about hearing a potential water leak from his basement, hoping my lie was convincing enough. He just stared at me, that smile not reaching his now cold eyes. I knew then he was onto me. I made it back home, my heart pounding in my chest, and immediately called the police. By the time they arrived, Mr. Holden had disappeared into the night. his house left eerily empty, as though he'd evaporated. Inside, it was clear he had fled in a hurry, leaving behind a haunting emptiness and far too many questions. The person I had seen in the basement vanished, just like the man who had kept them captive. Despite an exhaustive search, Mr. Halden was never found, his whereabouts remaining one of our neighborhood's darkest mysteries. In the aftermath, our street could have been mistaken for a ghost town. The vibrant life that once defined our neighborhood was replaced by an oppressive silence. Windows that once framed friendly faces now seemed to watch us with suspicion. Parents held their children close, fearful of letting them out of sight, even for a moment. Nightfall brought an uneasy quiet, a collective holding of breath until the safety of dawn. Our once close-knit community was forever altered. The easy trust that had flowed between us was shattered, replaced by a guardedness that went deeper than mere caution. We installed security systems, started neighborhood watches, and looked over our shoulders with a frequency that spoke volumes of our shattered sense of security. Conversations now often turned to the chilling events surrounding Mr. Halden, speculations swirling around his motives and the fate of those he took. His house stands as a grim reminder of the terror that passed through our lives, its empty windows like silent witnesses to the evil that lived next door. Years have passed, but the shadow of Mr. Halden still looms large over our neighborhood. His name is whispered in cautionary tales, a boogeyman figure that represents our lost innocence. The horror of realizing that someone so intertwined in the fabric of our daily lives could harbor such darkness has left a lasting scar. The chilling reality that you can never truly know someone, that evil can hide behind a familiar face, haunts us. The story of Mr. Halden, the neighbor who was everything and then nothing, remains a terrifying enigma, a dark cloud over a neighborhood that once knew nothing but sunshine.
I have a story for you, TheoryHubz. The year the hidden darkness within Mr. Thompson was exposed marked a turning point for our once peaceful neighborhood. It was as if a crack had appeared in the very foundation of our community, revealing a chasm of unspeakable horror beneath the serene surface of suburban life. Mr. Thompson, known to us only as the quiet man who meticulously tended to his garden, became the personification of the nightmarish realization that evil can reside behind the most mundane facades. Our descent into fear began subtly, with whispers of unease as pets began to disappear. We sought comfort in rational explanations, predators perhaps, or accidents. Yet this comfort was short-lived. The pattern of disappearances escalated, ensnaring not just animals but beloved members of our community. The mailman, known for his cheerful greetings, vanished mid-route. A young woman, her morning runs as punctual as the sunrise, disappeared without a trace. The fabric of our community frayed under the weight of these mysteries, as each unexplained absence chipped away at the sense of security we had taken for granted. The police investigation seemed to flounder from the start, hampered by a lack of leads and tangible evidence. Our once friendly neighborhood transformed into a tableau of suspicion and fear. Doors were locked well before dusk, windows shielded by curtains, and the vibrant community gatherings that had been the heartbeat of our neighborhood ceased entirely. It was amidst this atmosphere of heightened vigilance that a few of us, driven by a mix of desperation and perhaps a foolhardy courage, undertook our own surveillance in the hopes of uncovering clues that might lead us to the perpetrator. Our attention soon centered on Mr. Thompson. His behavior, previously dismissed as the eccentricities of a loner, now seemed sinister. The nocturnal activities in his garage, the disturbing sounds of machinery that broke the stillness of the night, and the sight of him loading heavy, oddly shaped bags into his car under the cover of darkness painted a grim portrait of the man who lived next door. The night the police descended upon Mr. Thompson's home, they uncovered a scene that seemed to leap from the pages of a horror novel. His basement was a meticulously organized charnel house with human remains stored alongside his groceries, as if they were merely another part of his daily life. The journals found in his study detailed his monstrous acts with a cold, clinical precision that spoke of deep-seated malice and a detachment from the humanity he preyed upon. The aftermath of the discovery was a surreal whirlwind of media attention, communal grief, and a pervasive sense of shock that dulled the senses. The man we had known as a quiet, if solitary neighbor was unmasked as a monster, his cannibalistic acts casting a long, dark shadow over every mundane interaction we had once taken for granted. His trial, a morbid spectacle, laid bare the extent of his depravity, leaving us to grapple with the chilling reality of the evil that had lived among us, hidden in plain sight. In the wake of Mr. Thompson's arrest, our neighborhood was irrevocably changed. The act of demolishing his house served as a cathartic attempt to erase the physical reminder of the darkness that had infiltrated our lives. Yet the scars, both seen and unseen, remained. Parents held their children a little tighter, wary of the dangers that might lurk just out of sight. The camaraderie and openness that had once defined our community were replaced by a cautious distance, a wariness born of the knowledge that the facade of normalcy could conceal unimaginable horrors. As years have passed, the events surrounding Mr. Thompson have become a dark legend within our community, a cautionary tale that underscores the fragility of safety and the importance of vigilance. Conversations once light and filled with the trivialities of suburban life now often circle back to the importance of watching out for one another, of recognizing the potential for darkness to reside in the most unlikely of places. Yet, it is in the quiet of the night, when the world seems to hold its breath, that the true impact of what occurred next door weighs heaviest upon us. In those moments, a haunting question emerges from the shadows of our thoughts. How well do we truly know those who live among us? This question, once an abstract musing, has become a stark reminder of the reality that evil can wear the most unassuming faces. And just as this question takes root, shattering the illusion of a return to normalcy, a piercing scream rends the night air. It's a stark, jolting reminder that the story of the horror that lived next door, the tale of Mr. Thompson's dark appetites, might have chapters yet unwritten, leaving us to wonder what new nightmares might await in the unseen corners of our seemingly tranquil neighborhood.